Hello everybody, Disciple here with Overwatch Curios. Now we've spent a lot of time talking about some of our favorite or the most powerful heroes and abilities in Overwatch, and with such a diverse cast of heroes it's pretty easy to see why. Recently we did a video talking about some of the most powerful basic abilities currently in the game, but of course that video was only in regards to what you can see in the game today. Now throughout the history of Overwatch, we've seen some pretty crazy abilities come and go. Some of these abilities get nerfed to bring them to a more reasonable level, while others just flat out get removed because of the impact they had on the game or just how OP they were. So in this video, we're going to take a look back at some of Overwatch's craziest abilities of all time and see just how OP they used to be. Now, until recently, Roadhog was one of the more stable heroes in the game. He saw very few adjustments in the history of the game other than the blanket changes to all heroes, such as an increase in the amount of time it takes to charge your ultimate. However, one major change came in early 2017, which completely reworked the functionality of his chain hook, and probably for the better. The update was dubbed Hook 2.0, as it completely reworked the functionality of his hook. Now to start off with, successfully hooked targets would now be positioned further from Roadhog during the pull than before. The gap between the two changed from 2 meters to a whopping 3.5 meters, nearly doubling the distance. This change, while it seems minor, does have some impact on how many pellets Roadhog can land from a shot after hooking an enemy. Now on top of that, the line of sight check performed by the system to determine if the hook was successful is now based off of Roadhog's position and not the position of the hook itself. This change prevented those instances where maybe Roadhog landed a hook on a target strafing behind a wall or backwards while on higher elevation and still allowed it to pass the check and pull the enemy around doors or through walls. Now finally, hook targets would be released if line of sight was broken before the enemy was reeled in. These changes were a large part of balancing Roadhog, but paired with changes to the way his gun functioned, he lost virtually all of the attention he had gained as a viable pick. Now, although Hook 2.0 was still powerful and sometimes gave Roadhog even more consistency, Hook 1.0 definitely makes a claim for one of the craziest abilities of all time in the game. Prior to all these changes, Roadhog would be able to jump and hook targets from completely out of sight, or even reel in players who were dashing or running behind walls at the time. Before the days of Hook 2.0, Roadhog was a staple pick because of how easy it would be to hook a target and bring them to certain doom regardless of where or how far they tried to run, and often you would drag them directly into your gun for an easy headshot to completely secure the kill yourself. There's still so many clips online of Roadhog being able to yank a dashing Genji across the map or pull a Tracer around walls as she foolishly tried to blink away. Whether or not you think his recent nerfs were deserved, Roadhog definitely had one of the craziest abilities in the game for a time, and it's probably good that it's been changed a bit. Now, Blizzard spends a lot of time and thought into the calculating of hero health pools, and with 3 different values of health, each with different functions, getting those values right can be difficult in regards to maintaining a healthy meta, since you have your health, your shields, and your armor. Now, most of you probably remember that Symmetra rework that occurred in December of 2016, but prior to that rework, Symmetra had an insane ability that created some really nasty team comps in the game. Before we got her new E ability, Photon Barrier, Symmetra had an ability called Photon Shield. For almost the entirety of Overwatch's beta phases, Symmetra had a very passive use ability that would grant allies 50 shields just for looking at them and pressing E. It had a very short cooldown so she could spam it onto everyone and it would stay on them until they died, when she would have to reapply it again. In terms of functionality, Symmetra basically had a targeted shield generator with no cooldown. She could stack up 50 health in the form of shields to all of her allies just as quickly as a Zenyatta can switch orbs between targets. And due to the functionality of the shields, the only way to remove that was to kill them and hope that Symmetra would forget to reapply the effect when they returned to battle. It's kind of terrifying to imagine now a Symmetra capable of having both a teleporter and a shield generator active, but that's basically what it was, except there was no physical shield generator to hunt down, and killing Symmetra didn't remove the buff from her teammates. During the same time, of course, Torbjorn was just buffed so that his armor packs would grant 75 armor instead of 50 as well, which meant that someone like Tracer, paired with both a Symmetra and a Torbjorn, could reach 275 health, up from the 150 that she had before. It created an insane meta that some of you guys might remember as the double Zen meta, since hero stacking was still in the game at the time. You'd have 2 Zenyatas on your team, which became viable because of Symmetra's additional shielding, along with either 2 Genjis or 2 Tracers, or one of each, and you would throw your shields on them as well as Zenyatta's Harmony Orbs, and they would just go ham diving the enemy team. So you'd have Symmetra, 2 Zens, 2 flankers, and then really just a random 6th member. It could be a Torbjorn for the armor packs, or it could be a tank, or even another DPS, and that was the team comp to beat, and it was really fun to watch and play, but also not really healthy for the game since there were so many heroes that were just completely out of the meta. However, the really good Tracers and the really good Genjis really came out and shone during that meta, but eventually Symmetra's ability was nerfed in order to bring that down. It was actually just before the Overwatch beta ended when Blizzard reduced the value of Photon's shield from 50 health down to 25, but ultimately in the end they decided it was an unfun and passive mechanic for Symmetra, and that by instead adding that same shield mechanic to a variant of her ultimate, they could hopefully open up Symmetra to more windows of play than 0.1 on capture and control points, but I'll let you guys decide how well that worked out as intended. Now our next crazy ability comes to us from another support on the roster. As the first hero released after the official launch of the game on July 19th of 2016, it took players a good amount of time to figure out exactly how and where Ana would fit into the meta. Early on, people thought that she was actually pretty weak, and she actually saw a few buffs to both her total clip size and her rate of fire, as well as an increase to the radius of her biotic grenade. These changes would play a key role in encouraging more people to play Ana, a hero that the fanbase had been hyped about for months, but were quick to write off as underpowered or even unplayable, which is primarily because she was just really hard to play. Now, as that stigma began to fade and people really began to try her out, people realized just how powerful Ana was, and in particular, just how absurd her ultimate Nano Boost could be. The first form of Nano Boost not only had the same 50% damage increase and damage reduction modifiers it has today, but also had a 30% movement speed increase for the target. Nano boosting Reinhardt became a very common tactic because not only did he have a large health pool with armor built in to have the damage reduction apply to, but he would now deal over 100 damage per swing in an area of effect attack while having the ability to chase down enemies due to that increased movement speed. The darkest meta was yet to come, however, as tank heroes began to grow in prominence for competitive play, with many teams choosing to run 3, Reaper shot straight to the top of the DPS role for teams. In what will forever be remembered as the Beyblade meta for obvious reasons, an entire season of Overwatch played out around a single goal of being the first team to stack both Reaper and Ana ultimates, since once Reaper ulted with the Ana boost, he was pretty much unstoppable and it was almost impossible to get away from him since he was just so damn fast. The accompanying Lucio would amplify his speed boost at the same moment as Ana would use the Nano Boost on Reaper. As he catapulted across the map at absurd speeds, he would activate Death Blossom and devour entire teams in the blink of an eye. Now, after 3 months of this gameplay, Blizzard decided to let rip on the Nerf gun, removing the speed boost from Ana's ultimate in hopes of encouraging Ana players to use the ability on targets other than Reaper and Reinhardt. Paired with an additional patch in January to nerf her biotic grenade, Ana has seen a sharp decrease in competitive play, but those who lived through the nightmare of the Beyblade meta still suffer flashbacks every time they hear an enemy Nano Boost fire off. Now, going back to the early days of Overwatch, we have 2 really absurd abilities that would just be unbelievable if they were in the game today. The first of those is the first form of Widowmaker's ultimate. While it functioned the same as it does now, Widowmaker could actually generate ultimate charge while she had Infrasight active. This led to Widowmaker being able to have a ridiculous uptime on the ability and dictate the pace of the game for her team. Imagine having a powerful Widowmaker on your team who now has at least twice the uptime on her ultimate as she has now, because remember, this was also before the blanket 25% increase to ultimate charges that Blizzard implemented during the beta. Widowmaker would basically completely dictate the pace of the game, and since most players weren't coordinated enough to deal with her, entire matches could be snowballed off of a good Widowmaker and high uptime on her wallhack abilities. Since other characters didn't have their ultimates nearly as much as she would, she could really pick them off before they could use their ultimates to turn a teamfight around, and just continuously create opportunities for her team by removing members of the enemy team with some sick headshots. Now when it comes to the craziest ability in history though, McCree takes that hands down. While this ability still exists today, it was the first iteration of Fan the Hammer that completely broke the game during beta. Now when the game first released in its closed beta state, McCree's Fan the Hammer would deal the exact same damage that each shot of his primary fire did. So 6 rounds at 70 damage per round meant that virtually anybody hit by his fan was certain to meet their maker. By controlling the recoil of the ability, it became easy for McCree to drop enemies even at medium distances, because even with damage fall off, converting just a few hits from fan and then fanning again meant he was pumping out more damage than nearly anybody could sustain. And it was also really rough when you'd run into anyone with a Fan the Hammer macro, which would actually adjust their mouse to compensate for the recoil and deliver a perfect Fan the Hammer exactly where your mouse was pointing, which is of course cheating, but was really unfortunate to run into during the beta when you'd have a McCree absolutely shred through you. Now the Fan the Hammer days came to a close pretty shortly after release, when Blizzard reduced the damage per round from 70 down to 45. It's still an extremely deadly tool at short ranges, especially one paired with his grenade, but thankfully it's not so absurd as to warrant the outlaw and must pick for every team. Well, anyway guys, that's gonna do it for our craziest abilities in Overwatch history. While we've seen some pretty crazy stuff in the past, Blizzard has taken a much more aggressive approach to testing and patching prior to releasing things to live servers. Doomfist, for example, saw changes before even making it to live, and continues to be adjusted so shortly after his release, which shows us that Blizzard is definitely striving for balance in the game, even though Doomfist was certainly busted as shit when he was released anyway. But with a huge player base and a wealth of insider opinions and knowledge from the pros, hopefully we'll never see some of the crazy abilities like these again. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I would love it if you could subscribe to the channel for future videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.